Hello and welcome to Circle Passages and Higher Ground. We're at TCMedia Studio in Olympia. It's Thursday, November 13th, 2024. Feels like, I don't know, 24.
A time
AD.
outside of time, yeah.
Sure. And today, Dr. Heather Taylor Zimmerman and I will talk about healing art for our time and in our time.
Thank
So
you,
welcome.
Buck.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about the kairos, or the opportune moment, like the moment for opportunity, which is what crisis is in a lot of languages. You know, a change point, a turning point. Crisis is opportunity, and this perfect moment in time and space to meet it. So I feel like that could be now.
Yes. Yeah. It certainly is, for sure.
Yeah.
And you've got some incredible artwork here. This
Yeah.
piece, you were saying, you kind of started some of the design the day before, whatever it was, the November 4th.
The election, yeah. Yeah, so all of the art is in process, which I think in itself is a powerful thing to show the process. Da Vinci said, art is never finished, it's only abandoned. And so we are the alchemical great work of art. We're always in process. And yeah, I started, this image came first actually as trying to come up with a symbol for the United States, for our country. And I can speak to that later, but this is what I tried to do, holding space, starting the outline on the day of the election. So, you know, from the morning, holding and entering sacred space, allowing you to get into a creative flow state and process, and then didn't really tune into the elections. Obviously, the next day it was even more important to hold space. And that's when I started to add paints, and all of them are in a state where they're not finished at all. They're probably actually about a third done, but they have enough color to convey what's happening.
And there's a lot happening,
There's
obviously.
a lot happening, yeah.
That's for sure. And you know, it's always amazing to me when you mention that, because 2019, 20, when I first got to know you and seeing your art, and you know, to the untrained eye, it's like, so it looks like you're done.
Yeah.
And so many times you say, no, it's still in process, and wonderful, because again, there's a lot going on, but it looks like, hey, where are you going?
All the elements are there, essentially. But yeah, so I did commissioned art for hospitals, clinics, museums, schools, etc. And commissioned art is, you're done when they say you're done. So they were always cutting me off early. They're like, you're done.
Yeah,
I'm like,
but it's
okay. Yeah. But no, there's a bunch of detail, and detail is actually the thing that takes time. But I wanted to tell a story. And so the idea is that we need a new vision, it's visionary art, and a new myth. So this symbolic mythic story, if the old myth of the United States is dead or leading us astray, or however you would like to say that, you know, what is a living myth? What's living in us? And that was kind of the invitation, symbolically. What is the living myth? You know, what is the image that wants to be articulated? And it's mine, in a sense. It's archetypal, so it's coming in me and through me. Jung said the artist is higher humanity, who evolves the psychic life for humankind and for the planet itself, I would say. And so from that angle, holding space, this is what I came up with, or this is what came up through me, is another way of saying it.
And to be able to take it from that source that you're just describing and be able to do this right here, I mean, that is just incredible. Bravo.
Yeah, well, you know, it was very interesting, actually. This is an image that came up the most recently, Selene in the Dark Night of the Soul, and I'll tell that later. She's the goddess who navigates, like there's the sun chariot of Helios. Selene, Luna are the Greco-Roman, the goddess who is the chariot of the moon through the dark night of the soul. And, you know, so as we move through the darkness, and that's what Scorpio, this time of our election cycle, but particularly maybe this time right now, moving through the dark night of the soul, having that guidance of the nocturnal, how do we see by starlight, how do we navigate? But this is usually more like what my compositions are like, really balanced, almost like a perfect symmetry, like if you'd folded an ink blot in half and you unfolded it and it was like equal. This was like, even compositionally, I was, huh. So I started, you often ask, what did I start with? And I started with this. So she has her hands over her heart. The heart is going to be more present and glowing. And then the uterus. This. How do we create essentially feminine creativity, procreation, and creation? You know, and the ability for the creatrix, the feminine creative, to create in its own image. So what is the face of the feminine, the lost kind of sacred feminine, or the goddess, who makes a show here? But so I started there, and then I'm very into moths and butterflies and cocoons, because that's another way to image and language the state of the dark night of the soul. And then the last thing I added in that one place is the Hamza hand, which is Islamic and a Jewish symbol, less a Christian symbol, for protection and creation. So it's the last symbol, and it's the least articulated, but it has it's almost like it's grounding, anchoring in the ground. It's a little bit like Gandalf, thou shalt not pass, you know, this image of holding safe space and sacred space.
So with the title of today's show being Healing Art, I mean, hopefully that's where, like you say, the butterfly, or coming out of the cocoon and taking life in a different way, or the hope and the healing aspect. I mean, you're really talking about all of that, just the lead into where we're at right now in this discussion.
Yeah, healing has the etymological root, and in all different languages, is wholeness. So the idea, kind of in the rainbow, which is the symbol after the flood. So rainbow is a symbol of hope and catastrophe, like the new land. And the rainbow serpent is Aboriginal, but it's cross-cultural. And the idea is that we need all of us, not only all of us as a society and a community and a culture and a nation, but all of us, including our shadow, ourselves. And so this time of going into the darkness, whether it's the dark night of the soul of our country, or individually, or even we just had Samhain, and you turn from the harvest into the dark time of the yearly cycle, the fallow period. All of that is this question of, you know, what are you going into your own inner landscape, your own psychic soil to harvest? Like what are we not fully expressing in the wholeness, the healing of ourselves? And that's what I think is a little bit up for our country, or a lot up, is, you know, what is in our psychic soil individually and as a nation for us to deal with, shadow internally, and then also remembering in terms of hope, which I know you said you question hope, but we're going to resurrect hope. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, said that 90% of the shadow is golden. So it's actually our superpower, our capacity that's buried, our wholeness. So it's a bit of that celebrate diversity, but, you know, like reclaiming and remembering those parts of ourselves that we have not allowed to become fully present, and bringing them out of the darkness into the light. So, you know, it's not the time maybe we would pick. Gandalf has that great line, it's not for us to choose the time we're given, but it's for us to choose what we do with the time we're given. So that's kind of the calling of our time.
Definitely, here's the opportunity for sure. What's really cool too is checking out Eagle and carrying the snake, you know, and it seems like what you were just kind of describing is, or were describing, it's not prey that but it's really, kind of hope and peace and wonderful, that's taking to wherever it might end, where this journey kind of ends for the eagle. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of struck me as it's not prey, so I'm not going to take it someplace and gobble it up.
And even, yeah, so it's interesting, the scorpion is over by you and you don't have to move. And then there are 3 stages to each of the zodiacal journeys, 3 progressive stages of development and evolution or transformation. So scorpion to eagle to phoenix, which is over there. And the eagle here is a little bit like the winged serpent with this. And so it's a mythic image of transformation. And even you're making me think as you speak, I don't know if you've had those kind of consumptive dreams where you're actually eaten by something, but you transform through the process. The first time I had it happen, a jaguar ate me, and I was just like, is this okay? Yeah, what is happening?
Good question.
But so sometimes we have to be almost consumed, and then in that we're transformed, like part of the alchemy of the experience. So who knows, maybe even the eagle will eat the serpent, but it reminds me of the symbolism of a winged serpent where, the tree of life has a winged serpent going up it. Mexico City, where we were just talking about, where I'm going for that conference. That's why it's there, as they literally thought it was Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent from a vision. So, and then as a last note with this Aboriginal rainbow serpent was to heal their nation in different ways. And so, we could use some national healing. So that, I think, is another way to look at the image.
And that just what you're describing too with the Aboriginal piece to me is it's the indigenous folks of that area. And it feels like we really need the indigenous of this country kind of to come forth and help us out here, because it's kind of interesting too. You mentioned with Jung of the darkness is being gold. It's almost like dark means just that. Black, there's no hope there, but gold is like, does it get any better?
Yeah, and then the negredo from the alchemical perspective is one of the necessary stages of alchemical development, but also it makes me think of the dark, rich earth and the feminine face, like the Black Madonna. The yin is black, so part of it is like, that's why this earth part, I haven't finished it, I think it'll have roots, but the earth is literally foregrounding all of this. And so, we need that ancestral indigenous perspective, but also, as we've talked about, when you get into that, you get into the land. And when you get into the land, you get into that indigenous ancestral perspective. And so that's there. And then, we of course have this image of the white buffalo calf, who's going to become more white. That's an undercoat. But because, that's from white buffalo calf women who gave the ceremonial tradition of the peace pipe. We've had a number of white buffalo calves born, and it's supposed to be this harbinger bringing in a peace and harmony, an era of peace and harmony. Black elk had, the rainbow, and that's part of the Hopi mythology, the rainbow bridge. So we have that foregrounded here, standing even in a bit of the plains. And I also think we, the kind of colonizing influence, when we get to the earth itself, then we will stand in that ancestral knowledge, and that what we have to do now is so ancestral, multi-generational, but land-based healing. Not just healing the land, but that the land will help us heal, as you well know. So all of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Talk about returning to roots, literally.
Yes, that's why it needs roots. We need roots.
It's coming.
It's coming, and they're going to be white. Yeah.
So a lot of things going on for sure. Quite a story. So this looks like
golden egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an alchemical symbol, golden egg. New birth, rebirth, kind of the God in the egg Jung spoke of sometimes. I don't know if you remember, but some of the early art that I did had golden eggs. Jung, I didn't know at the time, but golden eggs were this symbol for him. Somewhat prima material of the universe of eternity. And then my friend who died, who had the 3 brain tumors, golden eggs were the symbols that she had in the places where the brain tumors were. And so in a weird way, that speaks to this whole symbolism of death and rebirth, going through darkness, death even. And in that case, it was kind of literal death into light and life. And so what comes up for me as I say that is that I was walking in the park, which is where we used to walk when she died, and I felt her spirit, just this huge release of energy from matter. You know, and so part of it is buckle up for the ride, Magical Mystery Tour, and, you know, we are going into the darkness. It's a labor experience in the sense that labor, when you're in labor, there's, at least for me, there was a time where it was like, can this train go in reverse? Like, can we stop the train? And it's like, no, said my midwife, this is a one-way train. And so we're going through even death, archetypal and even to some extent real. We're in the 6th extinction wave. You know, we've talked about ecology. A third of tree species are on the verge of extinction. Like, we are in a hot mess, you know? And, you know, that's that liquefaction maybe. In the cocoon, you melt into imaginal cells, into goo, and then you're transformed in a new image. So that's kind of all of that, the hope, the death, the rebirth, all of it is this one-way ticket that we've got moving through this kairos or opportune moment. And that's what art can help us do, is it can help us hold the vision, help us actually visionary art, and help to guide us with this new story, this new living mythology that's collective, because the archetype of the artist is collective. And so, you know, we need hope, we need a vision, we need all of that to help move us through this time.
In describing what you did with your friend, with the golden eggs at those particular spots, it's almost like foretelling as she goes into darkness, but let's say on the other side.
Yeah.
The placement of those where the tumors are, it's kind of like, wow, you know, it's going to be just incredible when she gets to the other side of whatever's there.
Whatever's there, yeah. No, I mean, for the people watching, she painted those images in a nest in her head, swathed by gauze, 3 golden eggs, years before the brain tumors.
Wow.
And so it is prescient, what Jung called Promethean vision of art, or the magical value of art, to tell the future, but also to give you an image to hold you through the transition. And she died. Like, I have had cancer. I have actually the last image that she created of the golden eggs, which is an image like this, actually just like that. And it's the image swathed in gauze where the last place where she got it was in her breast, where I got my, you know, cancer. So the image is guiding us. It's still guiding us into something like, I don't want to die. She didn't want to die. Death is hard, and at the same time, it's not death in the way we think. It's like, as someone who's kind of awakened the capacity to see into death and to see the other side bridge over in spirits and in light and in all different ways, it is closer to life than what the shadow world we live in, that we think of as life, is more like death. But it doesn't mean we want to leave. So I don't want to minimize that this is going to be hard, this period that we're going through, and that death is hard. But I think that we are, part of the method to the madness of our experience right now is that we are being forced to go into the darkness. Again, Hades, the Lord of Riches, the underworld, we are in a descent move right now.
And somewhere in there, hopefully in that journey through the darkness is, you know, finding some light, looking for some light, ways to, it's not all oppressive.
No, yeah, and Hades, Lord of the underworld is the Lord of riches. It's where our buried treasure is. Like every Jesus, but every supposedly 142 sun gods, they died for 3 days and they descended into the underworld, even Persephone, Inanna, into the underworld to save the collective. So we go into the underworld to find our buried treasure and to bring it back. It's like the ultimate power move, but it's the move we don't make unless we're kind of abducted into the underworld, because we're so frightened we don't want to go willingly.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, in talking about art and healing, I know we've discussed this different times in working with children and teens who have different kinds of challenges going on, mental health kinds of challenges. And it seems like rather than this verbal part of trying to share what's going on, when we went to this right here, for them to create some artwork is really giving them that opportunity. They took the opportunity to explain, if you would, in a sense, this is what's going on. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's, you know, if it's the dark, if whatever it is. It was just amazing to watch that process, and it didn't have to be this right here, the verbal.
Yeah,
exchange.
in fact, we tap into, with our roots, the unconscious and what it also is the superconscious, kind of both ends of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so Pat, our friend, we were doing our own art therapy, and I was actually leaving a client, you know, who I did art therapy with, and then I said, you know, I'm actually going to do my own art therapy after this. This is the day after the election. And it was actually after that. So it was, I told you I had Celine come to me as an image for this time, and Harriet Tubman. And then Harriet Tubman was just literally made a general posthumously. And on that same day, Pat, my friend, was coming to do this art therapy. And so to get to your point of what is the power of this healing art for our time, so we're literally on Memorial Day, Harriet Tubman, unbeknownst to us, is being commemorated as a general in retrospect. And so Pat comes and she's like, I'm either painting Harriet Tubman or a blue sky with clouds, and which we went with because it was easier. But I just thought it was so fun that both she and I knew Harriet Tubman was in the house because we were tuning into art. So art taps us in both kind of in this move, like a tree, roots and branches, unconscious, superconscious, into something collective that taps into a greater collective knowing. And so we both knew something was up with Harriet Tubman. And then the next day I was like, Pat, Harriet Tubman was just made a general. And we're like, thank God. But so to me, it's that move. It's that not only is it telling us what's up with ourselves, and it does that. You know, we have all the different stories of people painting or drawing while we're talking therapeutically, and then you look at what it is, and it's a perfect vision of what isn't said often, you know, that wants to be said and is like, hey, but it's also tapping into the collective aspect as well.
What
And
a springboard too, excuse me, of then being able to, so, you know, kind of what's going on here, and then be able to describe it, but
Yeah.
just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me this hope in this transcendent capacity, again, rooted and grounded in nature, like the mother tree, those roots and branches, that taps us, our creative nature, into nature, and that it's that collective wisdom, it's that land-based ancestral wisdom that's like our soul in connection with the world soul, to me. That's where the hope lies. Like, that's where the deep healing lies. And that's what art taps into. And so that's why I'm so, you know, about the power of art, because it informs us in a way that the separative mind cannot.
So these next 4 years is going to be some very interesting art that's going to be happening with all kinds of different motivations, or from different motivations.
Yeah, and you know, this was already mentioned, but it's a form of storytelling. So for me, it's my primary way of storytelling, and I do automatic writing, kind of talking with the figures. So I might literally be like, white buffalo calf. You know, what would you like to tell us? Or what is your story? Or, you know, and then this is like a talismanic memory anchor, energy and form, where I can remember it and go back to it and be like, okay, butterfly woman, you know, what would you like to tell me? And each time I dialogue with them, it would be something different. And so this is like kind of a map and an anchor for that one juncture in time and space, but it also evolves as time and space evolve to meet us and reflect back to us, or witness, mirror, in a way that shows us where we're at and what we need at this one moment when we're looking.
And by listening like you're doing, you've brought these figures really, literally to life and to a form that we can talk about.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was thinking about that helps is, I remember the first time I was doing a painting of someone who had died. And they were a young soccer player, died inexplicably. I was doing a painting, and I realized that it was literally invoking their spirit, like their spirit was literally coming closer and closer. So art is invocative. I think it brings people close because it's a means of communication with the unconscious and superconscious mind, our individual and collective, where they can reach through, so to speak, and they can reach us in a different way.
Cool stuff, that's for sure. Anything else for you? I see some corn right here. So the symbology of the corn, I mean, it's food, of course, but
yeah. So part of it is there's a
down here too.
Yeah, the heartland of the earth, and then also there's a native goddess that's Mesoamerican. So she's from the South Central America. As well as up with the pyramids. You know, we kind of forget that we have some of the biggest and the biggest earliest civilizations that were native were in that Mississippi area, so that we have some ancient pyramids there in the heartland. That's kind of literally the heartland, if you will. And so part of what I am anchoring, like you were talking about, is this indigenous wisdom. So it's not that the native people have to then heal the colonizer, which would seem wrong, but that we need to tap into the earth. And so part of it is this, like, the corn, this sustenance, and this sacred kind of yellow alchemical golden substance, but also that's part of the imagery, the serpent skirt, a corn maiden goddess that I was thinking of, that even is a little bit present in this image at the top, even though Steve was like, thought it was a guy before I put the flowers and the hair, and now I'm like, maybe it is guy. I don't know, maybe, I think it's, you know, an androgynous figure, but essentially I wanted that serpent skirt, corn, land, to be anchored in the image, Buck. And the beauty is I'll find out more, because essentially as I'm creating it, it's excavating wisdom, you know, so I'll know like this topsoil amount that's like this thick, and then I'll like dig down, and then maybe 5 years from now, I'll be like, oh, that's what that meant, yeah.
So as you say, these images are really still talking to you. You know, we're not done yet. There's still
I'm not done.
more to come. But here's where we are at the moment. Just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, so it also has the elements, you know, earth, fire, water, air, hummingbird, sun and moon, you know, so even though it has a really interesting composition symmetrically, I told you this is way more my speed, you know, like this than this, and, you know, like this was like, okay. But yeah, there's still balance, even though the balance isn't as obvious in it. And then part of that is maybe we are particularly imbalanced right now. You know, we're kind of finding our footing, we're finding our equilibrium and homeostatic, dynamic balance right now.
Is it going to show up?
It is. I'm going to say yes. Yeah.
hopefully so.
Yeah.
You know what's cool too? I just noticed the mountains in
Yeah.
the background, snow-capped, but right in here, it's like space. You know, the stars. So, you know, like you were saying, bringing in certain elements. So, you know, kind of we think that's real lofty, you know, the universe or out of the atmosphere,
Yeah.
but it's also real grounding that, I don't know, something to really hang on to.
We're like 93 to 97% stardust. It's hard to imagine we're anything else, actually, but we are. And then this is one of the last things I did was I changed and I brought, you know, like these are snow-clad peaks. I think it's C.S. Lewis that speaks, probably a lot of people speak to like kind of the mountains that unfold into eternity, time, space, eternity. And so I wanted to bring this in because it is the dark night of the soul. And then also, I am just drinking in the starlight because I'm like, you know, there's a chaos, an order in the chaos. And so I'm looking at the stars, and they are their own, you know, zodiacal, mythic imagery projected out, but they're also themselves looking and reflecting back down the light from, you know, ancient. And so I'm looking at them kind of to anchor myself at this point. It's like reverse anchoring. I'm anchoring in heaven. And so I'm very, you know, so that was one of the last things I did was actually kind of took out some ambiguous space before I came here. And I'm like, I am going to put the heavens in here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and there's the earth is here. These are almost like halos, moon, sun,
Yes.
earth.
Yeah.
And very much a call for us to live our own myth, you know, our own heroic journey. In the feminine, like Maureen Murdoch, the feminine, you go down, and it's really for any marginalized population or that part of ourselves, the shadow part that's been marginalized. You go into the underworld to bring it back. So, you know, let's go,
Yes.
humanity.
Definitely. You know, you were just kind of referring to it, but orbs or circles, and you know, when I first got to know you, and you had developed circle passages, and just the symbol itself of the circle that is like continuous, never ending.
Yeah.
That's so powerful and so helpful to have that idea, you know, that to live that idea.
Yeah, and so
You've got it.
circle passages, Jung, the archetype of the self, wholeness, again, which is healing. Black elk, everything, you know, is done in a circle. Black elk, a million cool quotes on circles. You know, this is almost like a stained glass window that's a circle of a living tree in
Yes.
space. But yeah, circles are our image of holding, especially, you know, they say, and Jung said, when we're the most fragmented, when we're the most, you know, decentered and we need to self-regulate, circles, mandalas are the image that brings us back to center, that takes the fragmented, dismembered parts and remembers their wholeness. So, you know, that is the major move we're in, is like, how many circles can we have to help us?
And I guess trying to decide that for ourselves of how can I create this, or how is it going to come? How can it come forth?
Yeah.
With that, you know, again, that circular idea, but it's just so powerful.
Yeah, and that would be something if people are watching to do. One of Jung started doing it, and you know, obviously mandalas are ancient. Like supposedly the circumpunct, the circle with a dot at the center, is the first symbol. I don't think it is anymore because they just found new cave art, but put that aside. So when he was in World War I as a medic, he started doing a daily ritual of, and this is all ritual art, by the way, but of creating a mandala as a kind of a psychic window and reflection and communication. And so that's a really good practice, is to, you know, it could be super quick, it could be pencil, it could be color, it could be whatever. But when you do a mandala, a sacred circle, you are centering yourself. You can't help but like center yourself. So it's a great art activity. There are a ton of mandala coloring books and things at this time. But I also like going off-road and creating your own, just to allow the unknown, the unmanifest to kind of come through and see what it has to say.
Kind of what's going on here.
Yeah, give it a voice.
Yeah. Great way to do that, that's for sure. And again, with the circle of, it's setting the tone for the rest of the day, like to meditate in the morning, so it really get that energy for the next 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day. So it's a good starting point, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially if you do it in the mornings, kind of nice, because we tend to not give the darkness to include the nighttime and the winter time its due. Like, we're so masculine, yang, consciousness, sun, active, principle focused, extroversion, that moving into that opposite is really good. So doing it in the morning when you can even include dreams, but hold space, like the yin yang, hold space for both that tension of opposites. And that's why I kind of like the dark night of the soul, because we're so about summer, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, because there's sun, Buck.
Yes.
Yeah. But
light,
yeah, but we need to go inward. We need that dark time. So now is a great opportunity to just kind of move with it and see what's inside in our beloved shadow.
And just that idea, the concept of moving into darkness, because we're getting to the winter solstice coming up, the shortest, darkest day of the year, but to find something really positive about that. It's a time of rest and rejuvenation, in the sense of, I know spring is where it just starts blooming again, but at least collect what's been going on, I guess, through the earlier part of the year into this particular season. It's, instead of thinking, a lot of times don't like the dark, it's like getting up in the dark, going to bed in the dark, or going to work, actually. So it's kind of a little discouraging, but it's to find the beauty of the darkness, in the darkness.
Maybe light a candle, but and the movement of, I love the cathedral of the soul, the cathedral of the heavens and the night. When you can see it, there are clouds here, so it's not always a given. But, to really go inward and then look at the seeds, like the fallow period, if you look at it in terms of how we harvest. We turn over the field and it lays fallow, and then it's like, what are the seeds that are there? Like, what's in us? Turn into the shadow of the body, which is where we tend to cast our shadow, and be like, what's present? What wants to be spoken? And art's the perfect vehicle for, like, speaking through a body of art for the body and getting it out of your body so you can look at it and dialogue with it, communicate with it. And so it's a perfect time to be like, what's in my soil? And not just be like, what am I going to plant next year? But be like, what is indigenous to this soil? Like, what are the seeds that are already here? And, what would they like?
Anything speaking to you? I mean, this is powerful right here. And like you say, you still have work you want to do, right? But kind of, you're seeing anything else, or foreseeing, getting some feeling of, here's something else that I want to do during, I mean, you did right here.
So Celine, So I do have something that I'm moving into the launching a soul of creativity from, Black Friday. I'm going to claim it's Black. I've never done anything on Black Friday, but a time of giving. So the method to the madness is that I have all of these kits and offerings to come out, and kind of now we need them more than ever. Like, literally, we really do. So I've been in communication with a bunch of native tribes who've been displaced by fires in the heartland of our country, unhoused communities, like supposedly $1.6 trillion of essential services to the poor is part of the $2 trillion budget cut that's being, floated out there. May it sink like a rock, but so we need to support each other now more than ever. And so I'm excited to get this stuff out Black Friday through, the giving time of Christmas, meeting online and maybe in person, but really online, I think, for the winter solstice, and then into the end of December with a cocooning, whether you're a butterfly or a moth or both. You know, doing like a what do we want to become, and what image are we going to create? You know, if we're a moth or a butterfly, part of it is literally creating a moth or a butterfly, but it's like, what are we becoming? You know, how are we not only cocooned, but what are we going to emerge as we move out of that dark night of the soul into next year? So I'm excited to get things out to people in need. Quite honestly, that's because I'm excited to leverage this dark night of the soul to maximize transformative growth.
Definitely. So, little switch of gears in a sense, but
Yeah.
so you've been working on a mural at the Children's Museum here in Olympia. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah, so I finished that, and that was fun. It was for augmented reality. I'm like, rock on, you know. So the cool thing, I'm gonna take that and go in maybe a different way. But yeah, so the Children's Museum is amazing, and they actually just have a grant and a bunch of funding opportunities where they're going to create a whole nother museum as big. So cool. And so Pat and I decided, as we're painting, she's painting blue sky, I'm painting stuff, that we're going to say yes to an opportunity to be part of their visioning. And it's cool because it's really might have not only a focus on space, but it might, well, who knows what it's going to have, but it's going to have a curriculum on space and the stars, because we've worked a lot with ecological things, with carbon sequestration, the atmosphere, and what we landed on was inspiration. We kind of knew that, but like there's one thing to inform us and information, and so much of that is book learning, and then we're just like diving into this different way of knowing where like a goddess can come to you, or you know, things can come to you and literally save your life. They can tell you things like Harriet Tubman that you didn't know. And so we're going into this Children's Museum space program, Space, the New Frontier, Buck.
Not the final one, but
Not
a
the
new
final one.
Yes.
No, but we're literally held in a cosmic womb of space. So one of the big things I think that's happening is as we move out into a global consciousness, then we realize, oh, space is our neighbor. You know, we are in space. And so I love that movement. And I'm also in love with the night sky. So it's perfect.
Want to see how you're actually going to, with the ideas of actually putting that on a surface.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they literally might have a planetarium.
Wow.
How cool would
Wow,
that be?
that would
Yeah,
be,
so I have no idea what that means. But honestly, one of our greatest achievements, perhaps our greatest achievement of a species, is all the Hubble imagery and how we can map in terms of sound and imagery, like the initial milliseconds of the Big Bang, and like, I mean, we're capable of such greatness. Therein
Stay
lies
tuned
the
for that,
hope.
huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's stay tuned for that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Anything else like to add? I mean, really talking about healing art, and definitely for this time, it's always needed and always welcome.
Yeah, I guess I would say everyone's an artist. Jung said that, but indigenous tribes knew that. Everybody is an artist. And so, you know, take out a blank piece of paper. I know that gives a lot of people stage fright or whatever. You are an artist. Even close your eyes. Just let your hand take control. Ask it questions. See what happens. Let go of expectations. And just literally, I'll end with a bumper sticker that I used to thought it was, if not mad, at least an overstatement, which was art saves lives. I literally think it could save our species. So let's return to this knowing and this gnosis that is visionary ritual art in us and through us, and we all have that capacity.
So tap in and
Tap in.
and release.
Yeah,
Wow.
go fight, win humanity.
Sure. Well, thank you ever so much. It's always
Oh my gosh, thank you,
incredible.
Beck.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And
And thank
just
you
amazing.
to everyone,
Yeah.
to all the great people here.
Indeed. Well, we'll close for today. And again, thank you very much for tuning in and sharing. And we will see you next show.
Next show.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Beck. Thank you.